Yeah, and I have to keep remembering to lean in.
I mean, when you're doing your segments and that, yeah, I suppose I've got mine right in front of my face all the time. Let's see if we got a good connection. Excellent connection. Seems like things are all good. We're ready for the Audacity.
Okay, Audacity. On your marks, get set. Three, two, one, record. That should be enough to keep Tony happy, even if he doesn't see it, hear it, whatever. Okay, zeros. Three, two, one, zero.
Zero.
Close enough.
Good enough for government work. Give me a quick minute here to. I want to get the live chat window open, but I want it in the right account. And this is one thing Firefox is a little better at. All right, pop it out.
There goes my fan.
What, the fan went out?
No, the fan on my computer started up. It's pretty loud for a little tiny.
You got one of those small form factor desktop deals, don't you?
I have an M700 Tiny, yes indeed.
Yeah. It takes laptop parts. I built one for Dave, and he's never used it. All
I
right, if we're
actually
ready.
saw Linus Tech Tips where they had bought something from not Asus Tech, but another branch of Asus that was a NAS, and they said it was cheaper than when they built their own NAS, and it was smaller. And generally, other than the fact that it used a Celeron, it was a better machine than what they built and themselves. So, all right, let's go.
Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 414. This is episode 414.5, recorded on Sunday, June 11th, 2023. Feeling tickety-boo, I'm Bill.
In Frazzle City, I'm Moss.
Racking up the miles, I'm Majid.
First up in the news, Mint Monthly News. All Snap Ubuntu desktop will be available next year. Red Hat stop packaging. LibreOffice as RPM for RHEL and Fedora. Mozilla Thunderbird's next big update is now in beta. Windows XP activation algorithm cracked. Keygen now works on Linux. In security and privacy, we meet Black Suit. Then in our wanderings, I chase burning trucks. Moss is feeling the pressure, and Majid needs to stop spending money. In our innards section, we discuss laptop battery life, and then finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions. Moving on to the news. Majid? No audio.
So, in Mint Monthly News, May 2023, posted by Clem on the Mint blog, June the 2nd, the development cycle for Linux Mint 21.2 was closed a few days ago. Most of the projects have been tagged, built, and added to the repositories for the upcoming release. XFCE has been updated to version 4.18. CJS was rebased on GJS 1.74 and MozJS 102. XDG desktop portal support was added to all supported desktops, that's Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE. Among other things, this brings a global dark mode setting, and this setting affects applications which support it and lets you choose between three options. I prefer a light mode, prefer a dark mode, or let the applications decide. Among the many apps which support it, some are light by default, such as Firefox, Xed, Thingy, Xreader, and some are dark by default, like Xviewer and Pix. The setting is also supported by many Flatpaks and GNOME libadwaita applications. Cinema 5.8 is getting gesture controls for window management, workspace management, tiling, and media controls, and gestures will be supported on touchpads, touchscreens, and tablets. The software manager was given a UI refresh, better scoring sorting algorithms, and a tuned package list. End of quote. And on Friday, June the 9th, they updated this to say that testing has commenced of the Mint 21.2 beta version. I'm actually, I mean, I know this is a point release rather than a major one, but I'm actually looking forward to this mainly because of this Cinnamon getting the gesture support for window management and things like that, including gestures on touchpads, touchscreens, and tablets. I know that Joe of this parish uses Linux Mint on a couple of his tablets, but I've always found that Mint was better on a desktop with a traditional keyboard and mouse and whatever. And so I generally didn't put Mint on my laptops. If this is going to be a thing, then that would be really good. Now, I would assume that because they're still going to be on X11 rather than Wayland, so I would have thought that the gestures would probably be a bit basic, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that in more rudimentary things rather than like say the one-to-one kind of gestures that you have on Wayland. But yeah, I'm really quite looking forward to this actually.
Well,
What
I
about you
put
guys?
Mint on all of my computers, whatever they are. However, I turn off my touchpad so it doesn't make any difference to me.
Well, I think that it makes sense that we're kind of taking it easy, sitting back on this Wayland thing, and letting some of the little because there are some pain points still. If he just full stop went and started supporting Wayland right out of the box, some people that are used to some things just working, because that's our entire shtick on Mint is that things need to just work, and there would be some things that people would have to get used to. So I think it's probably a good idea for Mint to kind of sit back a little longer, let Ubuntu and some of the other projects get some of the little pain points ironed out, and that way, by the time Clem gets around to putting it into Mint, it'll just work the way Mint users traditionally expect things to work.
It can be pointed out that most of the successes on Wayland lately have been on Plasma, and we don't have a Plasma version.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact, that's a good point. Actually, I need to explore. I've got Wayland on my Plasma session of Kubuntu. I need to explore that a little bit more. Actually. Anyway, moving on. An all-snap Ubuntu desktop will be available next year. So this is from OMG Ubuntu via our good friend Londoner. An all-snap Ubuntu desktop is coming and sooner than you might think. According to Canonical's Oliver Growert, the next long-term support release of Ubuntu will be available to download in two versions. A classic deb-based version, which is the default, and for the first time, an immutable snap-based build for enthusiasts to experiment with. I was going to ask that question about whether it was immutable or not. Obviously it is. Why am I being snarky about this? Well, let's face it, an all-snap Ubuntu desktop is something of an inevitability. If I'm surprised by anything, it's not that it's happening, more than it's taken this long to happen at all. I agree. Of course, the new snap-based desktop build won't be the default, so it won't be the version that most people will choose to use. It will be alternative download with those more willing to put up with the pain points can kick the tires on. Even so, its arrival is a huge step forward. Ubuntu Core launched in 2015 as a snap-based, immutable version of Ubuntu tailored to Internet of Things, embedded devices, and other non-desktop purposes. It's been fairly successful. As you read this, it's out there humming away in digital signage, robots, drones, and so on. But Ubuntu Core isn't a desktop product. You can install Core on a Raspberry Pi 4, among other devices, and try and install a desktop on top of it, but it's not explicitly geared for that purpose. This, on the other hand, will be. Immutable desktops are the trend du jour right now, with the likes of Fedora Silverblue and Endless OS blazing a trail. They offer benefits over traditional OSs, including better security and reliability from a read-only file system, transactional updates, and easy rollback of changes. Now, with cups, the Linux printing stack getting snapped in Ubuntu 23.10, and most of Ubuntu's other vital desktop components either Snap or Snap compatible, and that includes graphics drivers, it seems the packages have aligned to make Ubuntu's spin on things a reality. You don't have to venture far in the Linux community to find criticism of Snap. Not all of it unearned, granted, but could the emergence of an all Snap desktop provide the packaging format with the opportunity to showcase what it can do? Joey Snedden reckons it could. I can't imagine this being fantastic, to be completely honest. It'll be good as a developer thing, I think. Um, yeah,
Well, if Fedora can do their all flat pack, then Ubuntu is welcome to play with what they want to play with.
true, but there's a big difference between the performance of snaps and flatpaks, isn't there? And that's part of the issue.
I wouldn't know. I've stayed away from snaps.
I think some of what's been said about the performance issues has been a little overstated. I mean, people have been having wildly different experiences with some of the projects out there. I think the biggest problem with any kind of containerized format for desktop applications is just their ability to communicate with other services and file systems and things of that nature. We're going to get into this thing with Rail here in a little bit with them stopping support for the RPM version of LibreOffice. Well, the problem with that is that, as far as I'm aware, the Flatpak of LibreOffice cannot connect directly to Samba shares. So, I mean, there's things that need to be fixed, and it feels like a build it and they will come kind of method of development, where the belief is, well, you know what, we're dragging our feet on this, so if we make this the default mainstream option, then maybe people will put the necessary man hours into fixing all these little problems with the Flatpak and the Snap alike. Um,
I agree with
but
you, Bill. I reckon there is a lot of that. There's a lot of let's just do it and let's just
yeah,
see how the cookie crumbles and take it from there. I mean, a lot of Linux has kind of been like that anyway, I think. Whenever you look at, say, desktop environments as an example, it's nearly always, whenever they come out, they're always a bit half cooked, in a sense. Whether you're looking at Plasma or GNOME or even Cinnamon and Mate to an extent. So it's kind of I feel that's kind of the way that free and open source kind of goes, because if you were to wait for something to be perfect before releasing, you never get anything released, I don't think, in
yeah,
free
you'd
and
probably
open
be
source.
waiting forever.
Yeah, I
Getting
mean, I
200,000 testers is way better than getting 2,000 testers.
yeah,
That's true.
and I remember one of the things that I noticed when I first moved over to Linux was the vast number of applications which were, version 0.8, version 0.7, things like that. Where I mean, some of them still are.
Yeah.
Um, and because the idea that somebody would release a piece of software when it wasn't, at least a version one, basically saying it from the beginning that, yeah, this isn't ready for this isn't ready for proper use, but I'm putting it out there anyway. It was a bit weird to me, but at the same time, yeah, it's kind of the way, it's the collaborative community nature of Linux, I think. Um,
I think we've gotten used to this sort of mental divide where we think of software differently. Linux users, don't we? We think of software in terms of projects instead of products, whereas like a Windows user or something like that, they expect software that they use, even if they get it for free. That is a product that is being put out by a company or by an individual
mm,
that is releasing this piece of software, and we don't see it that way. And
yeah.
there's this belief, this sort of implied belief, I think, that if you say it's version 1.0, then you are saying that this is ready to go, and there's not going to be any problems with it. And a lot of people are just not willing to take that leap. It's very arbitrary, the numbering system, but some people take it more seriously than others, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been getting upset over the numbering system on browsers because they used to have version numbers and then subversions, and now just a version number every 2 weeks. There's a new version. Yeah. Anyhow,
Yeah,
why don't I move on?
let's do it.
Red Hat will stop packaging LibreOffice as RPM for RHEL and Fedora. This is from OMG Linux via Londoner. Red Hat will stop shipping LibreOffice as part of Red Hat Enterprise Linux in future releases. At face value, the change confirmed by Red Hat and GNOME developer Matthias Claesen on Fedora project mailing list sounds bad. LibreOffice is a tentpole in the free software landscape and arguably the exact sort of productivity suite workstations benefit from. Worse still, limiting Red Hat's involvement in packaging LibreOffice for RHEL as RPM will have a direct knock-on effect for Fedora, its downstream consumer OS offering, something Claesen notes. Here, tongue, here, boy. The current status is that LibreOffice RPMs are orphaned, a term meaning they no longer have an active maintainer, with Red Hat, the hitherto existing maintainer, stepping away from the role almost entirely. Why is Red Hat doing this? Claesen says the Red Hat Display Systems team, who do much of the work required, is adjusting its engineering priorities to focus on other key areas like better Wayland support and adding HDR capabilities, things workstation users and Linux as a whole will benefit from. Quote, the trade-off is that we are pivoting away from work we had been doing on desktop applications and will cease shipping LibreOffice as part of RHEL, starting in a future RHEL version, Claesen adds. LibreOffice will remain maintained and supported in all supported versions of RHEL and Fedora with security updates as and when needed. The good news is that this technically doesn't matter. There's an official LibreOffice Flatpak build. This is available to Fedora and RHEL and other Linux users. The LibreOffice Flatpak can fill the void, so to speak. Claesen adds, engineers doing that work will continue some fixes upstream to ensure LibreOffice works better as a Flatpak, which we expect to be the way that most people consume LibreOffice in the long term. Could someone step up to take over maintenance both for the LibreOffice RPMS, both for the LibreOffice RPMs in Fedora? Absolutely, but the scale of the task shouldn't be underestimated, so anyone committing to handling and packaging and upkeep. So anyone committing to handling the packaging and upkeep will need to be fully aware of the job. You can get more details on a link in the show notes, the Fedora developer mailing list thread.
So again, this is kind of what we were saying before, almost, isn't it? The kind of, well, let's just do it and see what happens. And yeah.
I'm just seeing here, when you go to their website, let's see, download. And you do have app image as an option, which has got a little bit better integration. And you've got portable versions, which I assume means someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that usually means like a packed binary inside of a zip file or something like that, and then that would give you back any integration that you would lose. I think the challenge is like when you ship this to the enterprise market, it needs to be ready to go with zero downtime. You know what I mean? This they need to be able to pick up and do what they were doing day two. You know. Otherwise, I mean, Red Hat is a company that's relying on an income, you know, coming in. And if they're not providing a sellable product, then, you know, they're going to have problems. But again, we should probably be more optimistic and believe that Red Hat would not make a decision like this unless they had weighed the consequences and the options. And let's just hope that they really do the things that they say that they're going to be able to put more man hours on, like HDR and all that other stuff that we've been hearing about. You know,
I mean, I think because money's involved, I think it will. You know, if if your business depends on having a good product, which I mean, all businesses do, but you know, as we were saying, you know, a lot of Linux things are projects done by volunteers or community or whatever. For when it comes to Red Hat, you know, they need to make sure that their enterprise Linux works.
Right.
And so I think from that perspective, it's a very good motivator, isn't it? Money.
Well, some of this is also glossing over the fact that they just laid off several personnel at Red Hat. A few hundred.
maybe some of those were RPM engineers.
Yeah.
Could be.
And maybe now they're stuck. Oh, well, yeah, all right, lads. Well, I guess we're not going to be able to make them RPMs anymore. We didn't think of that. Hey, I know what. We'll just make it sound like we're moving on to a new packaging format. Make
Yeah,
it sound like we're
spin.
moving forward as a company. See, there's me being negative again.
So, Bill,
Ah,
I see the next news article is something that, again, just follows you around, doesn't it?
it does. Oh man, Thunderbird. I, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I do love. I mean, I love all open source projects, and I used to use Thunderbird a lot. But I got to thinking, Thunderbird. The only reason I don't use it is because I manage most of my email on my phone nowadays. So I mean, there you go. Um, but anyway, Mozilla Thunderbird's next big update is now in beta, and this is from howtogeek.com via the Venerable Londoner. Mozilla has ramped up development on the Thunderbird email client over the past 2 years. The Thunderbird 102 update arrived last year with many improvements, and now the next major release is available for beta testing. Mozilla just released Thunderbird 115 Beta 1, which is the first testing release for this year's significant Thunderbird update. The development team has already discussed how version 115 is another phase in rebuilding Thunderbird from the ground up, with significant code rewrites and some functional changes. Mozilla did promise that the email app will still be customizable to some extent, so if you don't like all of the changes, some of them can be easily reverted. The first beta release doesn't have all of the promised changes, but there is a lot to talk about. User-defined OpenPGP passphrases are now supported. The folder pane and context menus have been updated, and many icons have been replaced. There's also a laundry list of bug fixes and minor interface changes. If you want to give it a shot, you can download Thunderbird 115 beta from the official site, and that's linked here in the show notes, which is on the website via the link in the YouTube description. However, installing the beta version will replace any current installation of Thunderbird, and Mozilla recommends backing up your data profile beforehand. The beta version requires Windows 7 or later, macOS 10.12 or later, or a Linux distribution with GTK plus 3.14 or higher. And I would imagine that's pretty much everyone, unless you're running, I don't know what,
Some
Debian
old
9.
32-bit, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Thunderbird, gee whiz, it makes my heart grow. I mean, to see that they're so successful at this, because it just feels like something that kind of got left behind or whatever. It was still available and it still worked, but it wasn't getting all the love anymore because email was just being handled differently.
Yeah, as I said last episode, I haven't used a mail handler since I was using Eudora on Windows back in '98. Yeah.
I was trying to think the last time. I think I was using Fedora back in 2013, and I was using Thunderbird at the time, and I had a specific reason at that time for it. But now, that was back before the phones were as prolific as they are now, and the email aggregators on the phones, you just set it up and it just worked, But I can see the value in it. Anyway, Moss.
For all you Windows fans out there, Windows XP activation algorithm is cracked. Keygen now works on Linux. From the Register, again via Londoner, the unkillable OS rises from the grave again. Over 21 years after it first came out, the Microsoft operating system that will not die is receiving another lease on life. It is now possible to activate new Windows XP installations safely and securely without a crack offline. A blog post on Tiny Apps has revealed the hot news that nobody sane has been waiting for. The algorithm and methods Microsoft uses to validate Windows XP product keys have not only been defeated, it can be done so using Linux. In all, it's possible to generate valid activation codes for Windows XP without an internet connection. This is useful because the OS shouldn't really be connected to the internet, and as is, can no longer talk to Microsoft servers to activate anyway. From what we can tell, the product activation algorithm was cracked some time ago, and in 2019, an open source key generator was released that could output endless Windows XP keys. That program required external activation services to complete the validation and installation of the OS, though, which is tricky if those services are no longer usable or reachable. Crucially, last year, someone shared a Windows executable that can generate the confirmation ID codes needed to complete the activation process entirely offline. So you take the product key generator and the ID outputting.exe, use them together, and you get to activate Windows XP without the internet nor Microsoft's help and without having to use a crack. This month, that aforementioned open source key generator was forked and fixed up to work on Linux. It still appears to need the ID generating.exe, but hey, at least it's working. The mystery executable is also being reverse engineered to find out how it ticks, we're told. And bear in mind, we're focusing today on the activation algorithm being defeated. Windows XP was cracked with tweaks, workarounds, and unofficial patches that thwarted its piracy protection as soon as it was launched at the turn of the millennium. Here we're talking about generating valid codes without having to alter the system. This is not a recommendation. A word of caution and restraint. Please don't take this article as a recommendation to run Windows XP. It wasn't the most secure of operating systems back in 2001, and you should really not be running it in 2023, especially not on anything that is connected to the internet. However, saying that, the problem is that sometimes people need to. There is, for example, hardware out there that only works with Windows XP and won't work with anything newer, and some of it might be very expensive hardware, which is still perfectly functional, but which requires a long obsolete version of Windows to operate it. If you are lumbered with such a device, or if you have got some single specific and very particular piece of software that you need to run and which doesn't work properly on any newer versions of Windows, then you may be forced to use XP. If so, one of the problems is that Microsoft has turned off the activation servers, so even if you install clean fresh copy, you can no longer activate it over the internet. As an FYI, we're told the telephone activation service for WinXP still works, so that may be an option for you. Some folks also provide alternative ways to perform online activation of Windows XP that continues to work. We've tested the XP keygen tools in question on a fresh XP Mode VM in VirtualBox, the very handy add-in for Windows 7, which we wrote about nearly a decade back. Obviously, that was quite a while ago now, and Microsoft has removed the downloads from its website, but there is a copy on the Internet Archive, as of course there is of the installation CD itself. If you are absolutely determined to go online with XP in the 2020s, then you aren't going to get far with Internet Explorer 6.0. Even installing IE8, the last version for XP, won't help very much. It can no longer open Microsoft.com, for example. SeaMonkey version 2.49.5 is about the latest open source browser that we are aware of that still works on XP, but you could also try Opera version 36, which you will find low down on the company's downloads page. Avast also offers a version of its free antivirus program which will still work on XP. We hope that we don't need to point this out, but we'd advise against going to random download sites that you find on Google to get hold of older versions. If it's legitimate, you can probably still get it directly from the vendor, unless that vendor is Microsoft, in which case you're on your own. For once, we can't entirely blame it. The same tinyapps.org site is a treasure trove of minimalist applications for this long obsolete OS. We are told that there is an active community of XP fans on the internet helping each other out with advice on keeping this geriatric code running today, but really, seriously, please don't unless you absolutely have no alternative. If it's an option, run it in a VM and keep it isolated from the internet. That article was liberally laced with links, and they are all in the show notes, so go and help yourself to that.
So, a couple of things on this. I was using a tool years ago that extracted the activation key from the ISO that worked without internet connectivity a long time ago, and I'll be darned if I can remember the name of that tool, but that always worked pretty good because I didn't think XP even did any online whatever to activate. I thought that was all handled before you even had an internet connection. But I digress. So let's think about what would be some of the reasons why somebody would have to run Windows XP. and that would be because they were running a 32-bit operating system, or I mean a 32-bit chipset. Which I mean, that you've got options still in 2023. You've got plain Debian, which now is easier because you can get the non-open source drivers to work with that. You've got React OS if you've got to be Windows centric about it. And React OS is open source. It works and runs just like Windows, and it's actually up to, yeah. I mean, if you get, okay, I tell you what, if you get it running, let us know because we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's kind of hit and miss.
whenever I've seen stuff about React OS, it's always a case of, installing it is a right pain, and it takes this and it's take that. Wait a minute, that's just Windows, isn't it?
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so
Well,
it's
I think
kind of,
it's still in Alpha 6 or something like that. Maybe it got to beta finally.
I don't.
They've been
It
working on it for
says,
20 years or so.
yeah.
I mean, it's been out for a long time, but it's probably just one of those things. Nobody's getting paid
Well,
to
yeah,
make this.
nobody's getting paid. There's only a few people on the team, that you can
Yeah.
only do so much. Just ask the people at Bodie.
But I have got it to. That being said, I have got it to work in a VM before, and you're kind of in a gated sort of experience with this because you've got access to some applications, but it's not like I don't think you can just download Windows binaries and then just install them or run them as though it was Windows. But you do have some access to software.
Not like Haiku.
Not like Haiku, yeah. But I mean, there is still 32-bit Debian. I'll tell you what, if you install Debian with the general installer, one of the options you've got is the light version. And I don't care what anybody says, it means that it comes with LXDE and a very, very lightweight networking stack. And it's lightning fast and it's still modern looking. LXDE is probably, I wouldn't say it's abandonware, it's feature complete. If it had any security vulnerabilities, they would get fixed, but it's not getting any like feature improvements or anything. But it's still very safe to use. That would be probably the go-to option I would send somebody to, or Bodhi, because Bodhi still has a 32-bit version, don't they, Moss?
5.1 official, 6.0 beta, and they're going to start working on 7.0 as soon as they get 7.0 official and 64-bit.
So that's probably a good option as well because Bodhi would make it run like the day it was bought.
Yeah, and the 6.1 beta is also based on Debian.
It's a little different than what most people are used to, but I like it because it's just point, click, bang. I don't understand what they do that makes it so fast. It's like I don't know, stuff just Firefox on this machine, on this Ryzen 7 with 32 gig of RAM. I open Firefox and I got to wait just like everybody else does, and I open Firefox on Bodhi in a VM with 2 cores and 4 gig of RAM, and it just bam, it's like it was waiting on me,
Right. Well, I learned about a month ago that I am the only person who is donating monthly to the Bodhi team.
Oh well.
That's sad. It's a great distro, people. Go spend some money. Robert Wiley needs it.
Yeah, go spend some of that hard-earned money.
Anyhow, that's about the news, isn't it?
It sure is. Moving on to security and privacy. Majid?
So, new Linux ransomware black suit looks like Royal. So, an analysis of the Linux variant of a new ransomware strain called Black Suit has covered significant similarities with another ransomware family called Royal. Trend Micro, which examined an x64 VMware ESXi version targeting Linux machines, said it identified an extremely high degree of similarity between the two. In fact, they're nearly identical with 98% similarities in functions, 99.5% similarities in blocks, 98.9% similarities in jumps based on bindiff, a comparison tool for binary files, Trend Micro researchers noted. Comparison of the Windows artifacts has identified 93.2% similarity in functions, 99.3% in basic blocks, and 98.4% in jumps based on bindiff. Blackfurs first came to light in early May 2023 when Palo Alto Networks Unit 42 drew attention to its ability to target both Windows and Linux hosts. In line with other ransomware groups, it runs a double extortion scheme that steals and encrypts sensitive data in a compromised network in return for monetary compensation. Data associated with a single victim has been listed on its dark web leak website. The latest findings from Trend Micro show that both Black Suit and Royal use OpenSSL's AES for encryption and utilize similar intermittent encryption techniques to speed up the encryption process. The overlaps aside, Black Suit incorporates additional command line arguments and avoids a different list of files with specific extensions during enumeration and encryption. The emergence of Black Suit ransomware with its similarities to Royal indicates that it is either a new variant developed by the same authors, a copycat using similar code, or an affiliate of the Royal ransomware gang that has implemented modifications to the original family, Trend Micro said. Given that Royal is an offshoot of the erstwhile Conti team, it's also possible that Black Suit emerged from a splinter group within the original Royal ransomware gang, the cybersecurity company theorized. The development once again underscores the constant state of flux in the ransomware ecosystem, even as new threat actors emerge to tweak existing tools and generate illicit profits. This includes a new ransomware as a service (RAS) initiative codenamed Escape, said allow operators and affiliates to take advantage of triple extortion methods to impact of a successful ransomware. Okay. Triple extortion refers to a approach wherein data exfiltration encryption is denial
We
of
lost
service
him.
attacks.
There he is. You cut on
Uh,
us.
triple
Your
extortion.
signal is coming in real
Okay.
weak.
Okay. That might be because there's a thunderstorm happening at the minute
Yeah.
outside. So, triple extortion refers to a three-pronged approach wherein data exfiltration and encryption is coupled with distributed denial of service (DDoS) attacks against the targets in an attempt to disrupt their business and coerce them into paying the ransom. The DDoS service, per Cyber, is available for an added $500,000 fee, with the operators imposing conditions that forbid affiliates from striking entities located in the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, basically Russian, countries. Getting
So
quite
we can't
complicated, all
attack
this.
Russia if we buy this to use on people.
Yeah, I did find that quite amusing, that little last line.
So use time shift, people, or some sort of mechanism for creating snapshots that you can roll back to that are on the file system level. That way, if you do fall prey to something like this, then with a simple either ZFS or ButterFS rollback, you can just completely defeat this thing with very little consequence whatsoever.
Alternatively, you can take snapshots regularly using RescueZilla.
Yeah, but I mean, like tools like what's the one in Mint here? Time Shift. I mean, they come with the operating system, and it works really well. Whether you're using ButterFS or XT4, it gives you
Yeah, I was
the
going to
My
say,
experience has been it works half the time very well.
well, I mean, I don't know. I've had good luck with it. If you've got it set up right, and and you allow it to do its snapshotting, then I don't know. I've not had to use it in anger though. I've only just tested it.
it can use up quite a bit of disk space, apparently, time shift. I was just going to say, this is another reason for using ButterFS, since I think we mentioned that
Yeah.
a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah, it's important when using ButterFS though to do the correct sub-volume structuring. You know, when you're creating the file system that you're going to use. I'm not sure. I know ButterFS is an option if you get into the advanced options in the installer for Mint, but I don't think it creates the appropriate sub-volumes, which you would need in order to have a working system of snapshots and things like that. Can you do it on your own? Yeah, but you know these things should really be baked into the installer. I mean, the Arch installer's got it baked in and it works really well. So Anyway, nothing else on that subject. We'll move on to our bi-weekly wanderings. Starting off this week, for my part, has been somewhat chill at work compared to last week. That is except for an incident on Tuesday where, while dumping a roll-off box of wastewater treatment facility sludge, the cable, which was bearing the full weight of said box, snapped, bringing the box tumbling to the ground while simultaneously pushing my entire truck and trailer towards a group of people doing construction on a building in front of me. Luckily, the trailer brakes were engaged as soon as the box cleared the trailer wheels and landed squarely on the ground. Now, imagine, here's me standing on the ground. And the way this works is I engage the brakes on the trailer, and I go outside, and my controls to lift this box up in the air and slide it down and dump the stuff off of it and slide it back up are all outside. And then I've got a control to release the trailer brakes. That way, if stuff comes out, I can let it roll a little bit and then re-release the brakes. But the force of this box coming down was so hard that it pushed the whole truck and trailer forward as though there were no brakes at all. And there was people standing and working right there, and nobody ever even noticed that it happened. So I had to, reading on, the box cleared the trailer wheels and landed squarely on the ground. The truck came to a stop. To make a long story short, I was forced to leave the box at the facility in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and drive the 431 miles back to the shop in Fort Wayne to get the cable replaced, which they did the night after I returned, which was later that day, actually. The next day, I went to the General Motors facility where we load the boxes out of, and grabbed a second box to take to Cape Girardeau. The trailer I was using has the ability to haul 2 empty boxes at once, as long as they're empty, as long as they're 22 feet or under in length. I took the second box out, dumped the box that was left behind, and brought both boxes back empty. So really, transactionally, we didn't lose anything in that hole, except for the cable, which I later learned was somebody saw some fraying on the cable, so they took a torch to it and brazed it. And I said, you realize that when you heat metal and then you don't suddenly cool it, you detemper the metal, and now you've created a weak spot in the metal. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense. My boss was, he's got a rather epic inventory of replacement parts and tires, so it's not often that we need a part that he doesn't have there at the yard. So that was last week.
Mind you, he did lose some mileage and driver time, too.
Well, no, not really, because I would have came back and switched the boxes out and then come back the next day with the second box anyway. So, it kind of worked out, except for the lost man hours, there in the shop where they could have been working on something else, I suppose. And then the price of the cable, which I'm sure wasn't cheap. So then the week prior, I had to go rescue a trailer which was connected to one of our newer trucks that caught fire just south of Nashville, Tennessee. One of our older drivers was on his way to deliver in Milton, Florida, when he noticed smoke in the air. He turned around to see that his bed was on fire. He then pulled over. He had I forgot to click on the page. He had the wherewithal to grab his phone and his dog, but not much of anything else. He left behind his clothes, his wallet, and his keys. He only had one set of car keys. I hot-shotted down to Franklin, Tennessee to get to the tow truck company yard before they closed that day to get the trailer, which I did, but only just barely. The yard closed at 5 p.m. Central Time. I arrived at 4:51. Amazingly, the trailer wasn't harmed at all from the fire that burned the truck nearly to the ground. I delivered the load to Milton, Florida the next day. This is the second time I had to go to Tennessee to grab a trailer this particular driver was hooked to and experienced a catastrophic breakdown. 5 years ago, I had to bobtail down to Knoxville, Tennessee, to get a trailer he was on his way to Homerville, Georgia with. I told him the other day that perhaps he should just avoid Tennessee. Someone clearly put some kind of hex on him. At some point in the next couple days, moving on from all that, I will be performing maintenance on the Docker container that runs the Nginx proxy manager, which forwards traffic to all the appropriate web servers, cloud servers, and services on my LAN. This will temporarily disable mintcast.org for what I imagine will be between a half an hour to an hour. I've got Cloudflare sitting in front of everything, so it shouldn't matter at all because all the links are just taking you somewhere else anyway. So just letting everybody know, I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to get to that. The latest version of the Docker container that runs the proxy manager broke the web interface that is used to manage the proxied connections. Since none of the fixes seem to work, I'm just going to nuke the configs and start over. It's not a huge deal. It just means that I've got to re-enter all the stuff into it again. The proxy manager is basically just a way of setting multiple servers behind one IP address. The proxy does the job of sending the right packets to the right IP address or the right web server or service or whatever. So it's important that works really well. Normally, I mean, it is working right now. I've got no way of logging into the web interface to manage anything if there was a problem. So as long as there's no problem between now and then it shouldn't make any difference. But that's about all I got. How about you, Moss?
Well, we got Distro Hopper's Digest recorded on June 4th and had a grand time. Dale and Eric and me. The finished episode is almost 90 minutes, which gave Tony a lot of work to do editing it. Thank you, Tony. I've been having a grand time playing with the Focusrite Scarlett Solo Soundbox Bill bought for me. I have gone online singing over it and recorded one song and placed it as a free download on my Bandcamp page. Some idiot has already paid me $10 to listen to that.
My God. So you owe that guy.
I owe that guy since he also
bought
the box. Yeah.
It's only money.
Yeah. Well, my next online concert is tonight, not long after the show. So if you're not listening live, you'll miss it. Details were given on the last show. It's Festival of the Living Rooms number 18. You can find their Facebook page if you're into that sort of thing. It has already been running, and I spent a bit of time in the open filk room on Friday night. If I'm firing on all cylinders, I will record the bits and engineer them into sort of a live album like I did last time, which was about a year ago. And just in time, Xfinity has decided that I don't really need my internet access 24/7 and keeps taking it down at random times, at least once per day for from 5 to 20 minutes. That will go great if it happens in the middle of my concert, or the start, or the end. This has been going on since we reset our router modem several weeks ago. Is it the router's fault? No clue. I am willing to blame Comcast for everything. That's about all I got, Majid.
Okay then, so I finally sold that MacBook, the one that I'd said that I bought a couple of months ago now. I actually made a profit on it, actually. Sold it for more than I bought it for. And then immediately started looking at M1 MacBooks on eBay. And actually, I won a bid on one, actually. The reason for it is I'm still captivated by this idea of this incredible battery life that apparently you get with the M1. And I find that whatever I do, I can never get any of my Linux or Windows boxes to have anything resembling anything like that kind of advertised long battery life. Now, I admit that it's advertised. I've not actually used it, but from friends who do have MacBooks who are iSheep, they all talk about 16, 18 hours, charge it once a week, etc., etc. And it's actually the reason, I suppose, that started the conversation, which has led to our innards, which we'll talk about later, which is going to be a bit about battery life and laptops. But anyway, I do have a feeling though that it's going to be a bit of a disappointment when it comes to the operating system. I didn't like Mac OS when I was using it, and I can't imagine I'm going to love it now. But hey ho, why not? After listening to Moss et al. On Distro Hopper's Digest, I'm tempted to try Fairin OS. It sounds a bit like a Mint KDE edition, like they used to be. So could this be my next distro? Let's find out. I'm
I
doing a
think
bit
you'll
of
have fun with that, Majid.
yeah,
Uh,
it just yeah. I mean, I did like the review. I was paying attention to it quite well actually because I was listening to Distro Hoppers as I was doing traveling. So on my not long, but my drives this last couple of weeks. So yeah,
I
I
think
was.
you'll be looking back at your Kubuntu installations and going, "Why didn't it have these presets?"
Hmm.
Because the Farron dev really does a great job of getting KDE set the way it really should be,
Hmm.
and it's a lot easier. Anyhow,
Okay, so that's yeah. So that may well be my next distro. As I was saying, I was doing a bit of traveling. Went to Oxford with the wife for a bit of rest and recuperation. It was a nice little break. Checked out the university and other landmarks. And then this week I went to Sheffield, which is in the north of England, for a Royal College of Anaesthesia event. I got to be honest, I wasn't really a big fan of the city. There wasn't much to do, and it was clearly a place that was hit hard by recent economic woes. There was boarded up shops and things like that, homeless people, etc. But the people were very friendly though, and I even had an Uber driver giving me a free ride. Um, Technology was a big feature of the event. So the actual event was about education and training in anesthesia, and so there was people, with quite a few things technology related. So one was a podcast, a teaching podcast for new anaesthetists. There was a couple of apps. One of them was apps for introducing people to new hospitals and new departments. There was even a virtual reality thing, which was using, I think it was using Google Cardboard, which I'm surprised still is around. But anyway, and they're using it for simulation training. So, you have a emergency situation, how you deal with it, and also on the other side of the spectrum for helping relax and sedate children prior to an operation. It was really quite cool, actually. There's also a talk by a doctor who works with the Formula One racing circuit, and while he was showing, his kind of frankly horrific videos of accidents and how to, get people out and the treatment or whatever, I noticed that the laptop he was using, he was running KDE on it. So Linux for the win. As we all know, only the best people and only the best doctors use Linux. Anyway, I met a friend of mine who came up from London for a talk. And I know that this guy is involved in politics, and I've interviewed him for my other podcast. But it's he just drops these anecdotes that you just kind of go, "Excuse me, what?" So, if anybody's been following the news over the last couple of days, our disgraced former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has decided to quit. Basically, he's jumped before he could be pushed because he's going to be found having misled Parliament over COVID parties. And so we were talking about this over dinner, and he said, "Yeah, I was speaking to some of my friends at Number 10, and apparently they had this big plan of how they were going to attack the opposition on their energy things. And then Boris just, did this bombshell, and it completely destroyed their plans. And so I gave my mates in the Labour Party a call as well and told them, look, when when this is all calmed down, they're going to come after your energy policy." And I just kind of sat there going, "Excuse me, what?" My anecdotes are, "Oh, look, my daughter's tooth's fallen out," or, I've bought a new computer. Your anecdote is, "Oh, I just spoke to some lads in Number 10." Okay, all right. Um, on a slightly more uh, difficult note, I have a cousin who's unfortunately going through some marital difficulties, and I've been trying to support him as best as I can. I have to be honest, he wanted to get some local support, some support from the local mosque and advice, and I wasn't 100% sure that would be a good idea, but actually, they were very, very helpful. They were very good at, their counseling and things like that, and I was very impressed with the way that, you know, I always feel that whenever you have these kind of marital issues, that the importance must be on the children and the kind of upbringing that they have. And I was very impressed actually. And I think I was being a bit cynical beforehand. So that's what I've been up to for these last 2 weeks.
Majid, the answer is Google Cardboard has been discontinued as of March 2021.
See, that's what I thought, but when I saw
They
the
said
stuff
there
that they
were
were
still
using,
some three-party companies making things based on Google Cardboard by the end of 2021, but that's as far as Wikipedia goes.
I mean, the only other thing it could be, I suppose, is maybe an Oculus. But it didn't look like that because phones seem to be involved. But hey, I don't know. I suppose VR and AR are kind of in the news anyway because of Apple having invented it at WWDC with the Vision Pro.
Invented it, yeah.
Well, it is like that, isn't it?
Jumped on the crashing bandwagon.
I mean, every year I listen to, not every year, the last couple of years I've been listening to WWDC, because now you can actually watch it on YouTube. You don't have to have an iDevice to watch it. And every time I was like, let's have a look, let's see what they do. Maybe something interesting, and some of the hardware stuff, this, that, and the other. But when they just start going on about as if they've just invented, I don't know, widgets or multitasking or and now it's virtual reality. It's just nauseating. And there was a just going off on a tangent about the new Vision Pro, the AR headset. There's been loads of people, tech YouTubers talking about how great it looks and this, that, and the other. And then there was one, who I'm going to plug here, Juan Carlos Bagnell of Some Gadget Guy. And he did a proper 20-minute rant, yeah, which was completely fair, in which he said, you do realize that everything Apple announced was being done about 7 years ago. There's literally nothing new. And it's just nauseating. It really is.
Paying about $3,500 for it, that's kind of new.
Yeah, I mean, people were talking about how expensive it is, but actually, have you seen how expensive a lot of these things are? I mean, not just the VR. I mean, just look at Apple's lineup. Do you know what I mean? The cheapest laptop
Yeah.
that they do starts at 1,200. The MacBook Pro starts at about 15. Or maybe even 2,000 actually. And then now they've got the Mac Pro, which they've just come out, with Apple Silicon. That starts at 7 grand, and you're just like, actually, 3,500 for Apple is probably what you'll expect. I mean, we're talking about a company that made a stand that cost $1,000. Remember that stand
Yeah,
they
that was a
made?
joke.
I mean,
That was a joke.
I mean, I was just like, I cannot believe you've got a free pass on this.
But for
I
some
can't believe
reason,
not only that they made a monitor stand for $1,000, but it wasn't included with the monitor in the first
Yeah,
place, and you can't use the monitor without the stand.
yeah.
And
Well, there's this-
the monitor was a good $3,000. Yeah,
there's this perhaps unqualified expectation that goes along with every time Google speaks, or I mean Apple, that the next thing that they announce at WWDC is just going to be just a breakthrough, or like they're finally going to get it right. Everybody's been trying, and they're going to get, when like the M1 and all the battery life that you get out of that. So when you started hearing chatter about the AR and VR thing, well, Apple's getting in on it. You start thinking, well, there's a lot of room for improvement in that particular edge technology spear, I guess. And when they come out with this thing, it's just kind of basically what we've had, just a lot more expensive. I don't know. I think we've got evidence that it's just, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but we've had cheaper gadgets like this out for a long time that work as well as you would expect them to work, and it just doesn't take off except for the most, for that slim category of people that are willing to spend big bucks on technology for gaming and things. I mean, Meta wanted to go all in with the using AR and VR to do some kind of strange thing with virtual reality and meetings and workplace and things like that, and that's never going to be a reality with, as far as I can tell. But
I mean,
I, w-
basically,
I
it's
will
a
point
massive
out.
developer kit, really, isn't it? It's a big developer kit.
yeah,
And they're kind of putting it out there and saying, go on, make programs for us, which is kind of actually a bit of a parallel to what we were talking about earlier with free and open source stuff, except free and open source stuff is free and open source and it's community led and there's all that sort of stuff. This is basically a multi-billion-dollar company, the most expensive company that has ever existed in the history of mankind, basically saying, we're going to make this developer kit, go on developers, do some work for us for free, and then that's it.
Well, I will point out that one thing you can say for Apple is that they tend to not that they tend to have the product pay for itself, whereas with Microsoft they can put out products there for free and then sell you the apps that go to it and do all the advertising and sell your stuff to the advertising agencies. Apple to date has never sold their user base to other advertisers. So you are
Yeah,
paying
because
for the product.
yeah, they're a hardware company, isn't it? They make their margins on the hardware ultimately, and it's very interesting actually, isn't it? In a time where Google, Microsoft, and whatever, they're looking at monetizing the user, monetizing the software and things like that, and Apple, steadfastly sticking on no, we make our money on hardware. Where this costs us $500 to make, and we sell it for 1,500, whatever it might be.
Fifteen
What?
thousand. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
where does
I
it
mean,
end?
yeah, true. Yeah, so yeah, that's my bi-weeklies.
All right. Well, if nothing else, we'll move on to our Linux innards. This week we're talking about laptop battery life. What can we do to improve it? Is there a way to improve it? Are these options really worth trying? I don't know. Have we just gotten used to it not being all that great as Linux users? Because it does feel that way sometimes. But then again, I don't know how good Windows is with battery life nowadays because I just don't carry around a Windows machine and a laptop anymore. I haven't done that in a lot of years. So,
Well, there are a number of ways to affect battery life, including the way that they do with the Ultrabooks, where they underpower the processor and sometimes put two batteries in the machine. But even so, Windows has been known to do better than Linux on these machines. I know that I'm not currently using a product to be mentioned later, Slimbook battery, but I'm still getting 7 or 8 hours on my T580.
that's pretty good. I mean,
That is pretty good. That is pretty good. And I think that so what kind of prompted us to talk about this was a couple of things. Firstly was me keep on rabbiting on about M1 MacBooks and stuff. And why am I even interested? Because of the alleged massive battery life. I also listened to not an interviews, a podcast with Martin Wimpress, formerly of Ubuntu Mate, now on the Linux Matters podcast, and he talked about how he had bought a ThinkPad Z13 Gen 1 as his Linux laptop, and one of the things he talked about was how he was getting 22 hours of battery life, and I was like, what, on a Linux laptop? And then there's also a couple of articles that are around on the internet, which are linked in the show notes, about the use of Linux and ThinkPads, like Moss was talking about. Basically, I suppose you do have to kind of keep it in perspective. Historically, Linux battery life would struggle to keep up with Windows on the same hardware, but it has improved, where probably a 6th gen Ryzen U series can get maybe about 11 hours of mixed use. Is it Apple Silicon levels? No, but it's certainly better than it used to be. If you go back to 3rd gen and earlier, they weren't the ultra low voltage processors. 2 to 3 hours was good. If you go to fourth gen to seventh gen, uh, ultra low voltage processors, CPUs were stuck at about 2 to 4 hours, but it iteratively got better. Seventh gen Intel CPU had decent battery life. Then they switched to four physical cores on the eighth gen, which means a regression in battery life, which I've noticed because I have a Lenovo Mix 520 tablet with a 8th gen i5, which means it's plenty powerful. But yeah, the battery life isn't great. I'm not sure how the new 12th gen and then 13th gen is going to be because they're not that mature on Linux yet, and most of them have ENP cores or efficiency and performance cores, and I don't know how that will play with kernels and schedulers. Just as a bit of information, ultra low voltage processors or ULV processors are a class of processor that is deliberately underclocked to consume less power, typically about 17 watts or below. And this is at the expense of performance. And so these processors are commonly used in notebooks, netbooks, ultra portables, embedded devices, where low heat dissipation and long battery life are required, and you're probably not going to be doing as heavier and more performance hungry tasks. Although plenty of people edit video on their laptops. So, anyway, AMD's ultra low voltage CPUs weren't great for battery life, and if you see the ThinkPad article above, it talks about I'm trying to remember which generation it was now, but yeah, one of initially they weren't that great, but now that they've gone into Ryzen 7 4750Us, that has improved. And there's a quote basically: for what it's worth, I get about 7 to 8 hours of mixed usage on an i7 1165G7 on a Latitude 7420, which I'm thinking, is that what Joe has? Because he's got Latitudes, hasn't he? Anyway, I suppose we'll check with him when he's back. So some of the utilities that it talked about in the articles, one was Auto CPU Freak and Power Top. So the 11th gen Intel can get up to 10 hours on Linux using Auto CPU frequency. Now, if you're using a 6800U, you can get about 8. So AMD are kind of getting there now. I suppose, yeah, I'm being a bit unfair by trying to even compare these things to Apple Silicon, because at the end of the day, they have a vertically integrated hardware and software stack, and Linux will never have that. There isn't really a viable non-Apple ARM device for comparison. I mean, I think the closest we've got is the Snapdragon ThinkPads, and there's some definite issues with performance there, and I don't know if there's a Linux distro that would work on that. The other thing to bear in mind is that I mean, yes, you can buy a laptop which is built for Linux, a Slimbook, Entroware, System 76, or whatever, but most people, myself included, buy Windows laptops and then put Linux on it, either dual boot or Nuke and Pave. And Windows has plenty of power saving utilities, baked in. So therefore you might have the same machine, say you're dual booting it, and you use the Windows partition, and you're getting much better battery life than if you're using the Linux partition. The last time I checked, and this is probably still true, the biggest knob you have is power top, auto tune and lower screen brightness. Apparently that will get you about 90% of the way to the best battery life you can get on Linux, in my experience. Auto CPU frequency does do a good job, but yeah, power top does everything else really. And if you combine the two, you'll be laughing. Also, if you've got an AMD APU, you can use Ryzen ADJ to lower your TDP to as low as you can go before things go wrong. And so I just also want to thank, there was a couple of people on the Late Light Linux Telegram group who gave me a couple of ideas as well for that as well. While we were discussing this amongst ourselves, Moss mentioned that Slimbook have a utility which they use on their laptops to control and increase the battery life of their laptops. And it will it will just make some kind of adjustments to your experience, such as skipping the password ask, adding a brightness switch, adding a TDP sync option, adding a splash window, warning if your device hasn't been plugged into AC for more than 15 days. I mean, that's just, come on. I've never gone 4 days without plugging in, maximum. I'm sorry. Now, and I don't, and I'm not a heavy user. So the utility offers a wide range of possibilities thanks to its integration of other application services and drivers such as TLP, Intel, P-State, AMD, and NVIDIA. It means that the application is not just compatible with Slimbook laptops, but also with many other different computer brands and manufacturers who work with Ubuntu and its derivatives. The application implements three different energy modes: an energy saving, a balanced, and a maximum performance. And each energy mode comes with default values, but the user is allowed to change the most important values to adjust to avoid errors in their hardware. The energy saving applications like TLP focus on reducing power consumption when the battery is in computer mode by disabling extra options that are not being used.
You just read when the battery is in computer mode.
Did I? Okay, when the computer is in battery mode. Spot the deliberate mistake, people.
Yeah,
That was a test for you, Moss. Yes,
of
you did
course
very
it
well.
was.
You
Thank
did
you.
very well. You
Thank
did
you.
very well.
Oh, he'll
I'm very
always do
impressed.
well at those tests. So that's he's on that like right now.
Well, someone put down all the information on Slimbook battery and apparently assigned it to me.
Well, it's okay. I can. I just thought
The,
people
the
would.
first part of it's fine. I just don't know that we have to do their entire welcome page.
No, true. We don't. We don't actually. To be
But
fair.
at any rate, you can download Slimbook battery from our application download center for Linux with our repositories in Launchpad. You can also do it in a terminal. I would suggest that you only use it on an Ubuntu or maybe Debian based. If it's Debian based, you have to be able to add PPAs. I know some versions of Debian do not allow that. But it's basically just sudo adapt repository ppa :slimbook/slimbook, and then sudo apt-get update, and then you've got the repository added. You just do sudo apt-get install slimbook battery. Or if you're lazy, you can just type sudo apt install slimbook battery. Now you get the application, you start it, you select an energy profile in the tray icon, and it's been tested in desktops Unity, GNOME, KDE Plasma, Cinnamon, and Pantheon. I will also add to that it's been tested in Moksha because I've used it. And the rest of this is just all everything they want you to know about it. And I don't know if we need to read all this, except we don't have a show if we don't. Should I go ahead or does someone
No,
else want to read?
I'll keep going. It's all right. So
Okay.
basically, first you have the Slimbook battery indicator, and you can then use different energy saving modes such as energy saving, balanced, or maximum performance. The indicator icon changes whenever you use different ones, and there's also a couple of buttons which allow you to deactivate and also go into an advanced mode. Now, the advanced mode option, you'll find different tabs with options offered by Slimbook battery. So this could be your general configuration tab, which has things which are power on and off, auto start application, and an icon in the taskbar, working mode in case of battery failure, in the case of the power supply is not detected. A thing about remembering to disconnect your charger, synchronize your battery with the TDP controller mode, and an actual energy mode. There's also a battery cycles configuration tab, which enables and disables cycle alerts. So enables and disables screen alerts for battery cycles, and you can be notified when the laptop reaches a maximum minimum battery charge which you've defined. It tells you a maximum battery value and will alert you when you get to that charge capacity. It has a minimum battery value which establishes the minimum charge level that we want in our laptop while it's charging. It also tells you the number of alerts that you've had. And then you get in, as I said, to the configuration of the three energy saving modes, energy saving, balanced, maximum performance. So the battery load parameters, these can limit your CPU profile. So a mode is selected to choose the limitation level of your CPU. This option will affect the performance of the computer to reduce energy consumption. The CPU scaling governor saving profile, a mode CPU scaling governor is selected. Graphic card saving profile, energy savings are activated for graphic cards. In the case of Intel AMD cards, it just simply reduces the resources you use. In the case of an NVIDIA card, it will use the integrated card instead of the dedicated one, again, to decrease usage. There's some sound power saving profiles, which enables energy saving modes for audio. Does sometimes mean that there'll be small ticks that are heard. So Wi-Fi power saving profile, which enables energy saving for Wi-Fi. Enabling this may cause instability if you're away from the Wi-Fi network access point. Disabling Bluetooth when not in use. Again, this will save a bit of energy, and Wi-Fi being disabled when not in use. You can also set some persistent changes so that you set them and then they're always there, as it were, every time. You don't have to keep manually configuring. So this can include setting the screen brightness, disabling animations, not starting the Bluetooth, and not even starting the Wi-Fi, although I'm not sure that's a particularly good idea. Disabling the Wi-Fi when a LAN is connected. I mean, that's a good way of saving a little bit of battery life. Auto suspend your USB ports, so the auto suspend the USB ports of the laptop. Connected devices such as mouse, keyboard, or scanner are excluded by default from auto suspension. You can see the IDs of the USB ports by hovering the mouse over with the interrogation symbol, and so you'll know which ones are being excluded and which ones are not. You can also exclude Bluetooth devices from the USB auto suspend, exclude printer devices from the auto suspend, exclude Ethernet devices, and you can also disable the USB auto suspend mode upon system shutdown, and this disables the USB auto suspend when the system is turned off. So there's quite a lot of configurability, and once you have done it to your requirements, as it were, you can then see how well it works. So what kind of energy level is recommended by the Slimbook chaps? Well, the level of energy we recommend depends on the use to giving your laptop. If you're going to be using office use, performing basic tasks such as surfing the internet to visit a page, etc., you might as well use energy saving mode. On the other hand, if you want to give another type of use, video editing or something like that, you can use balanced or maximum performance mode. And very helpfully, you can contact the Slimbook battery team by sending an email to dev@slimbook.es. And but if you do have any specific problems or any error reports, they would very much appreciate it if you give a screenshot or generate an error report for that as well. So, Marcy, you were saying that you have used this on Bodhi, did you say?
I have used it on Bodhi. I've used it on Mint. I've used it on a few other systems. It is very easy to set up. Once you when you're comfortable with putting in PPAs, it'll be like almost second nature. But all the depth that they give you is only if you really need to tweak all these things. If you just use their basic settings, you'll probably be just as happy and not have to worry about any of it. You just go in, you set it up, you open it up, you say, okay, it's going to start on opening, and you set it to energy saving, and you're good to go. That's all you have to think about. It comes standard on a Slimbook PC. They are a manufacturer. I think it also comes standard on the Tuxedo PC.
So this is not specific to a piece of hardware. Then this is something you can install on any laptop. And
it's a hardware manufacturer who got upset hearing how Linux is bad with batteries, and so they wrote an app to fix it.
Okay.
So, what has been your experience with it, Moss, as someone who actually has used this? Has it massively changed the battery life, or has it just augmented it?
I have not run tests on it, but I do know that I haven't had anything to complain about. This is a generic. I'm getting 7 to 8 hours on my laptop without this. Oh. I can put it on and then tell you how much I'm getting. but I probably won't be able to really do much testing until school year's back in. But yeah, I am definitely going to put it back on my current machines. Well, my main laptop, which is the T580.
So what's the specs on that T580?
The T580? Oh, you would ask that, wouldn't you? I think I have that. Let me see here. Well, it's running an i5, which I decided to go for since it was over $100 cheaper, about $150 cheaper than the i7. And all the testing on the two processors say the i5 was actually overall faster. I don't know why they did that or how they did that, but it's got an i5. I think it's eighth gen, somewhere in
Okay.
there. I really do have it here. I'm trying to look it up quickly. Well, I don't know. I don't think I had to have it there. Well, it's not there. Okay. Well, I can report back on those specs later. I think I do have something on. Well, no, I use the T540p for distro hoppers. So I'll have to get back to you on that, Majid.
Sure,
Since
no
I'm
worries.
not
I was just
currently on
interested.
it, I can't just run system and say, okay, hey, it's got this. But I know
No,
I've saved it somewhere.
yeah, no, I'm just interested because the fact that you mentioned that it was eighth gen, and there's a thing about eighth gen have apparently not as good battery life because of the cores. So I was just interested to see what your
Well, let
experience on
me
that was.
see what I have
But
here.
that's fine. That's fine. I'm sure you can. I'm sure I can send you some for that as your homework.
Let's see. I've got 560 specs. I've got M700 specs. I got the ZA800. I do not have saved specs on the 580. It's a newer machine for me, and I apparently didn't run it and save it.
I think I'm going to see. I'm going to look up the arcane process of getting this installed on Arch on my two machines that I take on the road with me because, well, obviously it's probably just an AUR install, but I'd like to see how well this works. I
Yeah,
don't,
I mean, isn't that the whole point of Arch that everything's available? Okay, everything's in the
yeah.
AUR.
And if it's not, you can, I mean, if you've got the skill set, you can make the package build and put it in the AUR yourself, you know. That is an option. I've never actually done it, but I've never needed to either. Um, so this is no doubt I don't know, a continuation or an evolution of projects like TLP or
Yeah,
lab.
TLP is included in it.
Okay.
It has other tools included in it. The idea
Oh, okay.
is getting everything that they could get that could possibly help your battery life and put it in one simple package.
Because I think, if I remember right, the problem with TLP, well, I say problem. The thing about TLP was that if you weren't running a ThinkPad, then you couldn't take complete advantage of all the tools that came along with
But
that.
I am.
Yeah, look at you.
All I've got is ThinkPads around here. ThinkPads and M700 Tinies. Oh, we do have the One System 76 computer, but that's being phased out now.
I just buy so many of my laptops from like pawn shops and things like that. You can get
I've
awful.
tried pawn shops, and I find that the pawn shops don't really know what they have, and
Well,
they're generally
that's the point.
overpriced for the stuff I want and underpriced for the stuff I don't want.
Yeah, I've had pretty
Yeah.
good luck. We've got a lot of pawn shops in this town, though,
I do
and
everything
they,
on eBay these days. I know that
yeah,
people
that's
have problems with eBay, but I haven't. And if you go to a certified seller, then you know what you're getting.
yeah. You got to do your research into the people as well as the product.
But my T580 only cost me like $198,
Oh,
and that's with 16 gigs and eighth gen i5. And it even came with a touch screen, which the seller didn't even know about. Apparently, somewhere along the line, the screen got replaced, and they put a touch screen on it. So I'm happy. I don't need a touch screen, but it's always nice to have something that normally costs $100 more.
my wife's Dell's got a touch screen. She had that thing for 3 years before she realized it had the touch screen. And I'm like, that's great. Now you're going to get fingerprints all over your screen.
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
drive
yeah.
me nuts. I can't.
Well, Dells drive me nuts, but that's okay. Nobody makes keyboards like Lenovo.
That is true. That is true. They are.
I've heard good
But, I mean, they're
things.
not as good as they used to be. They have.
They change with each model. Some models are better than others. The
Yeah.
T430 is the best I've had in terms of keyboard, but my 560, my 580 were not bad. The 560 was a little. It felt like the key tabs were going to fly off if I hit them too hard. Yeah, didn't ever have the problem, but it felt like that.
Well, lads, if you want, we can move on to the vibrations
From the ether.
We
from
do
the
not
ether.
vibrate very much this week.
No, not much, but there is something. This was a message on the website from Henrik Hemren.
And I have to thank Henrik very deeply because every time I release a podcast and put it out on Mastodon or wherever I put it out, he's always there favoriting it. So
Hey, we gotta love our the fans that are interacting with us, And anyway, for me, he goes on to write, for me, an email client is one of the most important desktop applications. Most, if not all, of my email accounts can be reached with a browser, but I see many advantages with a dedicated client and he goes on to list same interface and settings, customizations for all accounts at one place, overview of all emails. I can shuffle around emails between accounts and one address book for all accounts, as well as calendar to do, etc., if I want to. And that's no doubt in response to our last episode or 413, where we was talking about Firefox and how we hadn't thought about a full-featured email client in some time. And, after reading this, I got to thinking, well, gosh, I never did stop using an email client. I kind of shifted that onto my phone, so to speak, because you open up Canine Mail on my phone. I mean, it's connected to 5 email accounts, and then the Samsung app is connected to 4 more, and then I got the Proton app for 2 more. So I do have that much sectioned off just so that I can keep the personal stuff separated from the work stuff. But yeah, I can see the advantages to having that sort of aggregation, and then when you open the app, you can see all of your inbox messages from all of your account in one place. So yeah. He goes on to write, furthermore, interesting to learn you, Bill, use Docker instead of a traditional LAMP stack. I use LAMP for local host for development sites. I use Joomla instead of WordPress.
Yeah, local
Docker-
host, not local hose.
Yeah,
Sorry.
got all. You don't let them hose. Docker may be an alternative for both localhost and live site. Thanks for your knowledge sharing. Yeah, and I answered this directly, but I'll go ahead and get into it a little bit without going into the weeds too much. The advantage to using Docker, I mean, just outside of it's not zero config, but it's a heck of a lot quicker to get something up and running than going and building a whole LAMP stack. LAMP, for those that are not aware, stands for Linux, Apache, and either MariaDB or MySQL and PHP, which are the components you need to run a web server. And when you use the Docker container, it's sort of kind of comes with all that, and you just kind of write the Docker compose with the things that you need, and it just kind of spins up and works. The reason I use it is because I have to run, and to be fair, or to be clear also, these Docker containers are running a LAMP stack. They're just running their own. Each one of these containers has got its own individual LAMP stack running with only the resources it needs to like serve up the website or any of my websites. The reason this works best is because I've got to put 5 websites, a Jellyfin server, a Collabora server, a Nextcloud server, an Audio Bookshelf server, and a couple of other things behind one single IP address. This way, I only have to forward the ports 443 and 80 to this one server, and then this one server is able to send all that out to the individual Docker containers, which is only running on these 2 machines. So if you're wanting to run several websites on one machine, and each one of these websites wants to use port 443 to be able to use HTTPS, you have to be able to map port 443 to another port outside of that container. And the easiest way to make that, to solve that problem, is with containers and then a reverse proxy to work out all that traffic. And so that's why that works so much better. Now, I do have the Nextcloud server that we use for all of our documents and our audio files and just about everything that we save. That is running on bare metal with a bespoke installed lamp stack, just built from the ground up on Ubuntu server. But I didn't need to do it that way. I could have done a Docker container, and I would have been able to accomplish the very same thing, which if I ever had to build this all over again, that's probably how I would do it. But thanks for your interaction, Henrik. We appreciate that. More of that, folks. Please.
Yeah, please do. We need someone to tell us, what we're doing right or wrong.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's been a long time since somebody's put me in my place on here.
Or just
I can do that for you. I can do that for you.
I was saying wrong stuff like every 10 minutes, it felt like, for a while there. But yeah. If nothing else, we'll move on to check this out, which apparently
we have nothing to check out.
We know there's nothing to check out.
Well, I'm going to be checking out Ferrin OS.
Yeah, there you go. I'm interested in that too, because if it, why is that a better option than something like KDE? What do you call it? KDE Neon. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ferrin Dev actually does keep the KDE Neon repos back. He waits for the stuff to get more stable, and then he adds them into his repos. So I mean, the way that I look at it, and from and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Moss, right, is that KDE Neon is basically an Ubuntu LTS with the latest version of Plasma on it.
Correct.
Kubuntu is the latest version of Ubuntu with as latest as they can version of Plasma, but maybe not be the most newest version of Plasma. Ferrin OS is Mint, so it's the adjustments that Mint have already made to the Ubuntu base, an LTS base, but with the latest Plasma. Have I understood that correctly?
Not quite. Ferrin was originally forked from Mint, but long since he has gone back to Ubuntu Core, but he adds in all the Mint tools. He has Plasma with some of the most sane settings you can get. He takes Discover out, so you're using the Mint tools for your updates and your package management. You're basically getting a really good version of Mint, only using Plasma, without the downsides of Plasma, which most people would say means Discover.
But the thing I don't understand then is why not just use Mint and put Plasma on it rather than going to Ubuntu Core, then adding each of the Mint things and then going forward from that?
He tried that and didn't. Actually, he originally developed his own. He didn't actually use Plasma. He was developing his own desktop, and then eventually he found that Plasma just worked better, and he switched to that. So it's been a growing process. I've used Ferrin since it first came out in 2016. And some versions work better than others because he's always trying to get to the next level, and sometimes he puts it out before he's gotten there.
So, what was the Ferrin OS Classic? Was that the one that was based on the previous LTS?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he's got a really good forum. I believe he's got a Discord channel. I think he's got other ways of contacting him. I've talked with him a bunch in the past, but not in the last few years. So, but I keep checking up on it because it always is worth looking at. It may or may not solve your problems. I think right now it's about as mature as it's ever been.
They've got a really nice website. I mean, it's ferrinos.weebly.com.
Yeah.
Maybe we can link to that in the notes.
Yeah, I'll put that
But
in.
it looks. I mean, it's a really cool looking implementation of Plasma. Well, I mean, they made it look like Windows 11, but only in the fact that it's got the icons in the middle. Which
He
you
has
can
about 8
change.
different themes that you can make to
Yeah,
look like
okay.
something else. But
Right, fair enough. So I want to know if anybody in the audience has any real anecdotal or factual evidence. Is this the closest thing to a KDE version of Mint that we can get, or if you found something better out there, let us know.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know that actually.
that is
Mintcast
my
at
opinion.
mintcast.org.
I don't think that I think they're also using the LTS of Ubuntu Core, so they're not going to have the latest Plasma, but they'll have whatever Plasma was on the LTS.
Well, I think Mint probably wouldn't have the latest Plasma either if we
It's
were.
true.
Yeah, so
Now there are other choices. I know that Solid X/K was forked off of LMDE2.
Is that still
And
around, Solid XK?
It is still around. It is still being developed. I think the
Wow.
XFCE version generally, in my experience, it installs on my computers better than the Plasma version. I don't know why. I'd love to be able to rate the Plasma version, but I've had so many problems with it. But yes, Solid XK is still around, and it's a fork of LMDE2.
Yeah, I remember Solid XK from back in the day.
I told you I don't know anything, Bill.
you're on it, Moss. We love you. All right, so moving on to housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see anything you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us an email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube, post at the mintcast subreddit, chat with us on Telegram and Discord, or post directly at https://mintcast.org. Next episode will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Sunday, June 25th, 2023, and there's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Next roundtable live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, June 17th, 2023. There's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. The next roundtable live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, July 1st, 2023. There's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. Moving on to wrap up. Joe couldn't be with us today, but if you want to get a hold of him, he is that tllts.org?
Yep, the Linux Link Tech Show.
LinuxLugcast.com. He's on MeWe. JB at mintcast.org, or there's a link in the show notes to buy him a coffee. Moss?
Well, I do Full Circle Weekly News every week. Distro Hoppers Digest about every 4 to 5 weeks. I'm at bardmoss at pm.me. I'm on Mastodon as @Zyvala at hosttux.social, and my other contact information can be found at itsmoss.com.
And if listening to this episode has made you just writhing in desire for more sound of my voice, You can catch me on my other two podcasts, Linux OTC and Three Fat Truckers. There's links in the show notes to both of those. You can email me at bill@mintcast.org. I'm Bill_H on Discord. I'm at WCHauser3 at fostodon.org on Mastodon, and at WCHauser3 on Twitter, and the same on Facebook. And I think this will be the last time I'm going to announce the Twitter and Facebook stuff. I don't do a lot with either one of those. But there you go. Majid?
So I'm you can email me at drmajid@mintcast.org. I'm at Atypical Doctor on Twitter, Atypical Anesthetist on Instagram, and the Atypical Anesthetist podcast is available on Spotify. Links in the show notes.
Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Someone for the audio editing, probably me. Archive.org for hosting our audio files. Hobstar for our logo. InitRD for the animated Discord logo. Londoner for our time sync and other general contribution. It cannot be oversaid. And I graciously accept the gratitude for hosting the server which runs our website maintenance, and the Nextcloud server on which we host our show notes and raw audio. And, of course, last but not least, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem and company.
And co. And we're out. It was short, but I think it was good.
Hour 40.
Yeah, 1 hour 40. It's not too bad for you, is it, Moss? You got enough time to have a nap now?
I wish.
Not going to happen, huh?
Not going to happen. Okay.